We are live. Ooh. Let me get the wiggles out. Because I'm in the yellow zone. Lots going on. All right. Mga kanya, welcome all. So you're listening to the Quilt Podcast. It's a collaborative effort between Voices for Racial Justice, the UpTake, and community. So the podcast emerged from a multitude of conversations among community folks who are committed to changing the rules and the conditions that govern our lives in what we call Minnesota Makoche. So we're coming to you live today in solidarity with National Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. We are here to stitch together the truths from people actively ending the school to prison pipeline, like my girls Danyika, Marika, and Chantel, and my boy Kevin, who are actively pushing for ethnic studies, the increasing of Black, Indigenous, and teachers of culture, and solutions, not suspensions, especially the suspension of kindergartners through second grade, because that practice is actually happening, if you can believe it or not. And that's what we're going to be doing at the Minnesota State Legislature this year in 2021, as we follow the leadership of Black Lives Matter at school, right, in their pursuit of a year of purpose and a lifetime of practice. So my name, I'm MK Nguyen. I'm a co-collaborator with the Quilt Podcast, and I'm also a Viet settler on Dakota Anishinaabe land. So one thing that my Viet elders have taught me is that is a saying, right? Ăn cắt quả kể trồng cây. When eating the fruit, remember who planted the tree. So I'm here today because of Black people. I'm here because Black folks like Bayard Rustin organized over 80 leaders to take out an advertisement in the March 19th, 1978 New York Times issue to connect the plight of Southeast Asian refugees and that of poor Black Americans. They solicited donations for the International Rescue Committee, and they also politically advocated for the resettlement of Southeast Asian refugees to Turtle Island. And among the ranks of these leaders were Coretta Scott King, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Daisy Bates, Hazel Ann Dukes, and A. Philip Randolph. This is just one of the many examples of how Black labor has laid path for immigration policies that aided my family's resettlement from refugee camp to our new home on Turtle Island. Which brings me to another point. We are here speaking to you today on Dakota Anishinaabe land. We acknowledge that the people and the nations who have called these ancestral lands home long before colonists imposed the name United States of America upon them. The term America itself is a reference to Italian mapmaker Amerigo Vespucci, which completely constitutes an erasure of the many names that Indigenous people have used to refer to their own homelands and territories. We want to also acknowledge that anti-Black racism is embedded in the origins and constitutions of this country. We acknowledge that we benefit from the physical, emotional, and intellectual labors extracted from and contributions unaccredited to Africans brought unwillingly to and enslaved on this continent. So occupied Turtle Island has a history of two major genocides that we have not fully worked through yet, that still remains unmetabolized. So that's why this ongoing injustice continues to emerge in our landscape. Yet we also know that through our work, through what history has told us, right, is that we are interconnected through our relatedness of blood, body, and bone. And just like the conversation that we're gonna have today, this ritual, our rituals, right, from the living can help our ancestors be well, which can help us be well. So when we choose to include our ancestors like Bayard Rustin, like Coretta Scott King, like A. Philip Randolph up in the mix, we are able to be a part of we'll be able to leverage our work from our specific specific position and place. And we know that in that work, the burden is big, but the blessings are even bigger, right? And right now, our specific conditions are telling us that it is time to abolish the police in our hearts, our minds, and the state of our relationships to one another. And it's time to pass ethnic studies bill, increasing teachers of color bill, and the Student Engagement and Inclusion Act now. So with that said, I want to pass it on to my brother, Kevin, to ground us for the day. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, MK, for that warm and necessary and mandatory introduction and grounding us in this space here today, particularly with Black History Month. I appreciate the history of America that you told. I know that ain't nothing that I learned in school. I learned that in prison, back to the school to prison pipeline. I learned that from one of the brothers on the yard in prison. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. So thank you for grounding us with that today. So with that being said, it's my honor and privilege to be here today with these sisters that we're going to have an opportunity to unpack this conversation. But before we get deeper into the conversation, I just want to start with a grounding question, right? Just to kind of set the tone of the energy in which, we were vibrating today while we're discussing this very important issue that's impacting our future. Our future is embodied in our children. When we think of our future, if we're not thinking of our children, then we are missing a couple steps because our children are literally the embodiment of our future. So the grounding question would be, if this schooling system is designed to prepare children for life as an adult in this economy, in this society, then what has the schooling system taught Black children about their lives in this economy and in this society, right? So as we talk today, there will be a question that we continue to come back to, and we can answer the question however we want to, with as much time as we would like to. But I'm thinking about, what does it mean? Is the school system actually preparing our children to go into the society to be citizens or slaves, right? It's a real question that I know I ponder all the time. So without further ado, I want to have an opportunity to introduce my esteemed panel who will be here discussing these conversations with me today. First, I want to introduce Chauntyll Allen. I want you to say, Chantel, who you are, who are your people, and I want you to fill in this blank statement. Black lives matter at school because what?
I'm Chauntyll Allen. I am a fourth generation Rondo kid, educator, youth advocate, organizer, and I'm also sit on the school board. So I kind of always put that in order because school board is just a plus, right? The work that we do is what we're born to do, and we've been doing it for a long time. So Black Lives Matter in school because Black kids go to school. I mean, our society is built by Black folks. You know, we are the history, and we are part of this society. And so, yeah, I mean, to keep it real simple, that's it.
Thanks, Chantel. Next, Marika Pfefferkorn. Who are you? Who are your people? And fill in the blank. Black lives matter at school because of what?
Yes, thank you. Marika Pfefferkorn with the Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, the Midwest Center for School Transformation. And my people are youth, parents, and community that are pushing back against injustice everywhere, every day. And that's in St. Paul, that's in Minneapolis, and that's in Twin Cities, Minnesota, and the nation. Black Lives Matter at school because we have promised our young people, there is a promise that an education is a path to a better life. I actually like to flip the script on this. Education is a path, one very important and critical path to liberation. And so Black Lives Matter at school because this is wedded to our liberation, and we got to get it right.
Thanks, Marika. So next, Danyika Leonard. Who are you? Who are you people? And fill in the blank. Black lives matter at school because of what?
Thank you, Kevin. Peace, everybody. I just want to also just say thank you for inviting me to be in this space. I'm honored. I know Marika and I know Chantel. We met recently, and I mean I'm honored to be in this space with y'all. So so thank you. So my name is Danyika Leonard, and I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm a cousin. I'm a sibling, I'm a friend, I'm a homie, I'm a neighbor, I'm an organizer, I'm a social worker, I'm many things. And lastly, I'm the policy director for an organization called Education Evolving. And the other part of my world is an organization that I co-lead, which is called the Ujima Collective. So to answer your questions, Black Lives Matter at school, because our babies deserve to have a learning space that is affirming, loving, allows them to bring their full selves, and maximizes the brilliance that's already there. That's what our babies deserve. And they deserve a space where I like what Marika said, like it's a liberatory space where their full selves can flourish.
All right. Thank you, Danyika. I guess I'll share as well too. Who am I? I'm Kevin Reese, and I'm Director of Criminal Justice at Voices for Racial Justice. And I landed in this spot straight from the cradle, through the pipeline, through prison, back to community in this position. And all of my people is everybody that's along that pipeline that I know and I grew with and had those shared experiences with. And I know how much it has impacted our lives, impacted the trajectory of our lives. I know friends who are not here right now because of it. I know friends who are in prison right now because of it. I know how so many people, I've seen dreams get deferred right in front of me, right? I've seen them die right in front of me. I've seen people who had, we all grew up in school with kids. We all had dreams at one point. I remember we was in school, we had dreams. We wanted to do stuff. We wanted to go stuff because we were told, like you said, Marika, that education was a path to like freedom and liberation. And then I see somewhere along that pipeline, we run into things that say, oh, that's not true. And I've seen it change people lens on the way they see society and they see community and they see themselves in connection to that. So for me, Black Lives Matter at school because I think as Chantel said, our kids are at school, right? That's the place where we send our children to go during those very, 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 very vulnerable years where their brains are sponges. Their spirits are innocent. We are sending our innocent children and they're handing them over to caregivers who are tasked to help raise them up to be productive members of this society. And it matters because that's where we send our kids. Well, okay, now we can kind of get into the nitty gritty and kind of get into some of the questions and we can unpack so much more. I can't wait to lean on the collective wisdom of you all. So we'll just get right into it. Why is it important for young people to learn about themselves, learn from Black teachers, and not be suspended ever? First, I want to come to Marika. Why is this important? Why they need to learn about themselves and learn from Black teachers?
I think of it from a cultural perspective is fundamentally as young people, our whole experience is about learning who we are in relationship to our family, to our community, and those other environments that we're coming into. And that this is a time where young people are seeking belonging and connectivity to affirm what they're learning about what their identity is. And the question about why should somebody never be suspended is culturally, particularly in Black communities and African communities, we don't push people out when something occurs. We embrace them and engage in how are we going to get through this? What's going to be the solution? And how do we move forward? And so it is actually counter to who we are as a people to separate ourselves from community. And the other thing is our young people, their brains are still developing until like 26 years old. So a part of this process is testing, taking risks, and finding out where those boundaries are for themselves and being in a safe space to be able to do that, make mistakes and come back, make mistakes once, twice, 3 times, So suspension is a removing of that person from the community. It is separating them from their experience. It's disengaging them in relationships. And it really is a punitive and shaming method that has been demonstrated again and again, not to actually serve the purpose for which it exists. And what it exists for is to respond in a system that doesn't have enough resources, doesn't have the wherewithal, doesn't have the understanding to be able to react in real time and figure out what those long-term solutions are that are going to keep us together as a collective community. Because suspensions don't just harm the student and the family that get pushed out. It harms the learning community that you're in, because it demonstrates it's not a safe space to be who you are.
Thank you, Marika. I want to come to you, Chantel. Why is it important for young people to learn about themselves, learn from Black teachers, and not be suspended ever?
I mean, I think I'm gonna go towards the erasure. You know what I'm saying? Like it's important because the system is set up right now to erase our greatness, to erase the fact that we were part of building this great country, part of this society. And when we don't have Black teachers in front of this classroom, it's hard to interrupt that message that's coming through the curriculum. So one is we got to have those. We need to be able to see ourselves in something other than the slave depictions that they put out there, and see that we are capable of any and everything that other folks are. When we look in our history books, it seems like, well, you know what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? You look at the history book, man, and all you see is white faces. You see massacre, right? You see destruction. You see this message that tells you that massacre and destruction might be a way to be great, right? Then you go home and you watch TV and you're seeing the same thing. You're watching it over and over again. And if we don't interrupt that messaging and start to give them individuals that are powerful, that are great, that are successful financially, intellectually, in all areas, right? Then subconsciously, our children start to be indoctrinated with white supremacy, right? And so we have to interrupt that process. It's such a big picture, though, that immediate response is to put Black folks in front of the classroom so that they know the story, they know the counter story, they know the greatness of who we were in each incident, and to be able to bring that forth and point out that here's another person that contributed to this story that they're telling you that they didn't want you to know. And so I think in both situations, it's to interrupt that white supremacy indoctrination, and then it's also, immediate response is having somebody who can tell their story.
Thanks, Chantel. Danyika, to you, sis.
Oh,
Why is it important for young people to learn about themselves, learn from Black teachers, and never be suspended?
I mean, those are three big questions.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would say about the first question, there's so much more to discuss and unpack. Black students need to see themselves in a space where, I know that for me, when I had my first Black teacher, I was a sophomore in college. Let me tell you though how well I did in that class. I wasn't finna disappoint my professor. And I know that a number of other folks that I've talked to about that, they share that same experience where look, hey man, Professor so-and-so, like she don't play, so I need to show up. And so, that's something that I've always carried with me, is that it allows students to be in a space where they can see their reflection in who's teaching them. The other thing that I wanted to share was that having Black teachers, there are some conversations that don't need to be had. There's some levels of understanding that can be reached in different ways and in different contexts. And then there's also a space for some conversations to be had, real conversations. And so having teachers that you can relate to and that you feel on some level they understand like what you might be going through, and they can speak to you in a way that our baby's ears can hear. Not to mention that it increases outcomes for all students, but that it is, and that's important. I would say that one of the things around suspensions is that there are some folks who conflate like being welcome to learn with being ready to learn. And so And I say that because, sometimes our babies are coming to school and they're not 100% ready to learn. Does that mean that they're not welcome to learn? Does that mean that the way that things are, that they don't have the ability to, I think, to be supported? And so I think that's something that I've been kind of holding. It ignores all the other ways that people, scholars, families, students have come up with to support their learning. It just completely ignores it.
Thank y'all so much for that. When I think about this question, I'm often thinking of the Latin verb educare. And when we think of education, the duty for teacher to bring out and bring forth. So why is it important for young people to learn about themselves? Because whatever their passion is in themselves, their light, their particular gift given to them by the creator is in themselves. So if there's no space for them to be able to go in and bring out what is in them, and for them to say there's space for what's in me, because what's in them may be anti everything that we think the American education system may teach us. So inside of those classrooms, there may not be place for their dreams to even come out, right? So I think that that's why it's important for kids to have an opportunity to learn about themselves, because learning about themselves will put them on a trajectory to actually live a purposeful, driven life, right? Without being disconnected from themselves. And to have an opportunity to learn it first in school would be great. But oftentimes what's happening is there's where we whitewashed. It's called, I refer to it as the blue eye history or blue eye compliments, right? Like we go into school and we learn that there's two me's. There's one me that needs to exist in the school and kind of got to be a good boy in order to like maneuver through this. And then there's the me that leave here, and none of that don't matter. When I go home tonight, none of that is going to impact what I eat. None of that is going to impact what's really going on in my house. It's just like you said, Danyika, a lot of the times I wasn't ready to learn when I came to school, only because it was tough last night. It was tough on the way to school today. It's tough right now. I don't got the capacity to learn. And guess what? That means now I'm in trouble. Now I'm disruptive in class, and now I'm all of these things. But it could have just been I wasn't ready to learn right now. I wasn't ready to receive Christopher Columbus right now, teach. I can't handle Christopher Columbus right now. My uncle just got shot, so I think that that's why it's important for me and have a chance to learn from Black teachers. I was just thinking, Danyika, when you said you had a Black teacher, I had to like really go through my brain if I ever had a Black teacher. Like, damn, did I ever have a Black teacher? Yes, I did. 8th grade, Franklin Middle School, a Black woman teacher. To say the same way, I ain't playing her class. When I went in her class, I knew what it was in the dough. Like, I ain't playing her class. I wanted to do right. So it did matter. That was something that mattered to me. Even in my 12, 13-year-old brain, I knew, like, when I go inside of this classroom, like, I want to be open to receive. And why, children should never get suspended. You're right, it's erasure, right? You're being criminalized. It's the first, you're doing a bit. It's how you learned how to like do a bit. So every time you are suspended, you are taken away. And for the other kids, it's like this punishment model that we learn there. Oh, such and such got suspended. So when such and such get arrested a couple years later, it's kind of like normal to us because we've seen such and such, or this happened to that person or that happened to that person. Our first encounters with being erased from space should not be happening to us in school. And when you suspend a kid, you're like erasing them from their seat that day. Inside the classroom, their seat is empty and all the kids are talking about it. Like, oh, bro or sis suspended today. It's a real thing that happens in that classroom, and it's beginning to desensitize our kids. So by the time such and such get in high school and they end up in JDC, it's kind of par for the course. Thank y'all. Next question. What are you witnessing the multitude, including yourself, doing now to advance these ideas? I want to come to you first, Chantel. What's going on out here in these streets right now?
I mean, I think, eliminating the SROs out of the school contract and redesigning the public safety plan, if you want to call it a public safety plan, to be more community centered. Just seeing that the folks that are going to be responding to our youth when they are in the midst of a crisis or having one of those days where they just ain't feeling it, things have happened, are people that are like their coaches, the folks from the community that they might know, the uncles. Those are the people that are filling the roles of in the budget, right, of of stepping up to respond to these youth. And also, implementation of restorative justice. I really am pushing in on that. Our school districts moving towards it, but they don't want to let go of that penal piece, right? It's PBIS, positive behavior intervention. Basically, you get a referral, or after so many referrals, you can be suspended. And so what I'm doing is really trying to push in on how do you have both at the same time. It's complicated. Also, really trying to work on the the professional development that we choose. How do we get white teachers, because we have a lot of them, right? How do we get white teachers to recognize, not in a way that is sympathetic towards our community, but in a way that's empathetic towards our community? And both of you guys, Danyika and Kevin, spoke about when you had that Black teacher, you showed up different, even if your uncle did get murdered the day before, because that teacher knew how to work with you in a way that was still empathetic, understood where you was coming from, but was very firm with, but brother, in order to prevent you from being down the same path, these are the things that you might need. And it felt a lot different coming from our Black teachers. And so increasing Black teachers, increasing other pathways. Last year, we had a huge push on social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists from our teachers union. Our teachers went on strike. I, not to say that trauma and PTSD is not real in the urban community, right? We're not just talking about amongst Black people. We're talking about in the urban community. What I'm saying is that our schools are not a treatment center, right? And there's ways to manage PTSD and trauma without having to invest all of our dollars in pointing at our little Black kids and saying something is wrong. And so really trying to figure out how we can recreate pathways so that folks that are paraprofessionals are coming from our community can get into mental health practitioner positions so that they can properly say that this student does need to be seen by a psychologist, not inside the building, right? But at their own psychologist. But previously what was happening was we didn't have those professionals in the schools. And so when, the little kids were acting up, it was the teacher that made that decision. It was the teacher that was referring them to a psychologist. And the psychologist was clocking the dollars, passing the dollars on to the psychiatrist so he could get some dollars, giving the kid some med and creating an IEP for a student who really probably didn't need one, right? Who really just needed an empathetic Black teacher to tell them how to overcome some of these trials and tribulations that they were encountering in the urban community. I'm not going to say Black community, because this is happening all over our city to everybody who lives here, right? And so those are some of the changes and things that I've really been pushing on to try to curb some of that, the implementation of tech schools and tech programs so that we can have better choices, because I call it, there's a group of youth that I feel are already caught in the pipeline. If you're in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and you haven't obtained the literacy skills to enter into a four-year institution, or you don't have the drive or desire to even be taught anymore. So a lot of times they break that at about 6th grade. A lot of our Black boys are not even interested in school anymore because of the way the system is set up. Providing a technical program or something so that they can get a licensure that will get them a living wage to prevent the criminalization that will happen in them trying to balance life right after graduation. And so that's some of the stuff that I'm really focused on and working on in the St. Paul Public Schools. And I think it's happening around the state a little bit more now too, with the onset of the unrest that happened after Brother George Floyd was murdered. So.
Thank you, Chantel, for your wisdom and expertise in this particular space. Thank you. Danyika, I'm gonna come to you. What are you witnessing, right? The multitude, including yourself, doing right now to advance some of these ideas we just spoke about?
Those are really good questions. So I'm gonna go real big, and then I'm gonna end with two specific things that is happening. And these are things that I'm observing, not only just with myself, but with others within the community. So I'm witnessing people being present. I'm witnessing efforts towards real policy change, shifting in paradigms and mental models, like efforts towards that. I'm also witnessing people tirelessly holding space in love, but also unapologetically. I'm witnessing stronger development of felt like kinship and fellowship around some of the work that we're doing. And I'm also witnessing on extreme sides, like it's not happening and it is happening, people really trying to take care of themselves or not taking care of themselves at all in this work, because this work in general is just, it's exhausting. And if you don't have anything to refill your cup, it will cause harm to you and those around you. And you won't have anything left. And I know that I have been there a number of times. So the two big things that I do want to share about are the work that I've been doing around the revision of the social study standards. So every 10 years, MDE is required to review the social study standards. They're not necessarily required to revise them, but they can update them. And so I have been a part of that process since early last year when they announced all the committee members. But pretty much like my efforts around that has been to create standards that include ethnic studies there's 4 strands. And so ethnic studies would be the 5th strand, but also infused in all of the new standards, in that we decenter whiteness, we decenter the European lens in which our children have been taught for since modern day education, since we started, schooling. I hope that it can teach about the history and current role of race, racism, and anti-racist work. That it's also taught through the lenses and narratives and intersectionalities of historically marginalized groups, and that it's student-centered and it's relevant to who our babies are and what they've experienced. And it's liberating for all students. I could go into a whole lot of stories about people who would adamantly disagree that that's what social studies should offer, and hold a lot of fear about what kind of how their students might experience that. And so I'm trying to be diplomatic, but there's people who are scared of that kind of change and shift in mental model. They're afraid that it's going to make people feel bad or hate this country. I mean, I personally have more faith in our babies than that, but that's kind of where some of those folks' heads are at. Thankfully, I'm around a lot more people who share those same hopes and beliefs. The other big thing that I'm working on, that I'm a part of, is supporting the revision of the teacher standards of effective practice for Minnesota. There are a number of standards that teachers have to meet in order to become licensed. So we are a part of making sure or supporting the licensing board to make sure that it supports social emotional learning, that those standards undergird family and community partnership. I can't stress that enough, that teachers know the importance of partnering with family and community, and that they are not disconnected. They come to these schools, they are a part of that greater community, and they cannot separate themselves from that. That teachers are aware that in their journey to become teachers, that they have like a leadership track or a leadership journey, and that they are starting to have more awareness and understanding of policy. Also that they have actionable reflections on race, privilege, and implicit bias, and that it's student-centered and rooted in equity. So that's the work that I've been doing with the licensing board, but also in addition with that, I'm a part of a coalition to increase like the Teachers of Color Act, Teacher of Color and American Indian Teacher Act, and also increasing access to alternative teacher pathways. because that has also been a really great strategy to diversify the teaching workforce.
Thank you, Danyika. Thank you. Marika, to you, sis. What are you witnessing the multitude, including yourself, do right now to advance these ideas? What's happening out here?
So I wanted to take a moment and pause in solidarity with our young Black sister in Osceola County, Florida, who was assaulted by a school resource officer in that space. And just let the folks across the country know that we stand in solidarity against the violence against young Black girls, young Black boys, and that harm continues to happen. I think about the work that we've done here to remove school police officers and have police-free schools and see progress happening, but at the same time, really concerned about the level of hyper-surveillance that is replacing physical policing in schools. For example, where they have like Gaggle, where they are actually surveilling students' emails as a way to identify students as threats or otherwise. And so I see the increase of technology surveillance as a way to further criminalize young people and actually believe that the school to prison pipeline is being expanded. And we call it the cradle to prison algorithm, because now not only are you identified by human beings and labeled and tagged, you now have algorithms that are identifying students as risk for being criminals in the juvenile justice system. And so this is emerging, and COVID has actually perpetuated how people engage with technology and young people in education without a lot of conversation about what is consent and what is engineered consent, how your information is being used and stored, and how it can be used against you in the long run. And so as we're talking about removing police from schools, we're not removing the criminalization of students. And so what I'm seeing in the streets is a transition, but it's not a good one.
Wow, that was heavy. I didn't know. I'm not surprised, but the reality of, I need to go talk to my son about this. I got a 17-year-old son who's a senior in high school, and he's doing digital learning. I need to tell him, hey, bro, they probably checking your algorithms, man. What you got in them
Social
emails.
media monitoring.
Like it's a real thing, you know.
Yes.
The fact that just pissed me off. I wish I could say different. That information just pissed me off, because you're right. We can't trust human beings to not see us unbiased. And now they're going to unleash computers, right, on our children. And with the findings of these computers is going to determine how folks treat them. It just scared me, and it pissed me off. But what I would say, what I'm witnessing right now, and including myself, to advance these ideas, I go everywhere, and any chance I get an opportunity to have conversations or talk to people like this, I want to like reframe the whole idea of what we consider education, right? Like this idea of this American dream education. Go get my education, and then after I'm educated, then after I get my education, somehow the American dream was supposed to just emerge from me. We have decades, centuries of history to show that's not always the case, right? Education does not take away your black skin or your brown skin or what it means to be oppressed. So I just want to talk to everybody about the difference between education and memorization. Don't allow this American system to define to you what does it mean to be an educated human. I want to put the power back into children to understand that every day and in every way, it is an opportunity for you to learn. And there is no gatekeepers to your education. There is no people outside of yourself that you must go to them, and they're going to give you a paper, a degree, a diploma. And because they gave you this piece of paper, it means that you're educated, right? I want to like completely take away that notion. That does not mean that, right? Education is a path to liberation for some, but it's not the complete answer, right? So I always talk to children about making sure that you understand that there's a big picture to education when we're talking about education, and to constantly ask themselves, are you being taught to memorize stuff, or are you being taught to critically think, right? Because in the schools, our kids aren't necessarily taught to critically think, because if some of them critically think in some of those classrooms, they're gonna get suspended, right? Some of the stuff that they may have to say to the teachers and some of their perspectives on the world and the lens, right, is gonna come straight out of their algorithm, the stuff that they know and they think, if they actually get to tell the teacher, hey, yo, teach, that ain't true, right? That this student is gonna be considered combative, right? Not willing to be indoctrinated. They'll have all kinds of language for this child. And this child just may be someone, he or she, that wants to critically think. So that's something that I do all the time, is just give space to children to understand that you got to learn how to critically think, and your education is defined by yourself, not by no piece of paper, not by no institution. So if you are in an institution grinding for a piece of paper, understand that that's not the end of your education. Go get it, go get your degree, get your diploma, but understand that that's only the beginning of your journey. So the next question, I'm gonna come back to you for this one, Marika. What do you need your fellow beloveds on the other side of this live conversation to do with you to continue to advance these ideas in 2021 and beyond?
Thank you. One of the things, of course, I'm a member of the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition, and we have been pushing this student inclusion and engagement bill down at the state legislature since 2014. And the things that we are asking for are not unreasonable, nor are they all expensive, but it really requires the will to make these shifts in how we operate in the system. And that requires the pressure of youth, parents, and community members showing up and telling folks down at the state that this matters, showing up and telling their principals and their superintendents that this matters, because it's not just the state legislature that we have to influence. There's a whole lot of people that have influence, whether it's professional associations, whether it's the principal association, whether it's the superintendent's association. All these people are weighing in on what should be happening around suspension and expulsion. And so we need to make sure that the voices of those that are most impacted are the stories that we're lifting up to compel our legislators to change the policies that can be changed at the state level and at the district level. And so in the Student Inclusion and Engagement Act, we touch on the role of police in schools. We talk about when there are suspensions that are happening and parents and community members want to push back, there is no avenue to actually complain and have a hearing about whether this suspension was actually justified. And so one of the things that we're pushing for is a parent complaint center that would be situated at MD or in a community space. So there's actually a place. I have parents calling me on a daily basis, like, what can I do about this? And there really isn't a lever to address that in a systemic manner. So one of the things we're really pushing for is this parent complaint center. And the other thing is, last year, we were successful in getting our little ones protected from suspensions. And when I say little ones, I'm talking about preschool. I'm talking about our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds, because they are being pushed out and suspended.
You talk about them suspending some kids in preschool. That's crazy.
It is. So like there actually is a 17% higher rate of students, Black students, being pushed out in preschool versus K through 12. So, and again, a lot of our suspensions are still happening in our primary level. So we were successful in getting that implemented. There's a lot of education that still needs to happen because folks don't understand that you can do a suspension in a preschool. But this year, we're pushing for that to go even further between kindergarten and 4th grade, because up until 3rd grade, you're learning to read and then you're reading to learn afterwards. And so we want everybody not to be suspended, but we also know who we're up against. And so at minimum, preschool through 4th graders should not be pushed out, because this is their time to learn who they are and how to learn. And that relationship you were talking about earlier with learning, education, and educators. And so this is a critical time to have young people in school and engaging with our families. And so we have another portion of the Student Inclusion and Engagement Bill that is a moratorium, not a moratorium, but it ends suspension between K kindergarten and fourth grade. So that's what we're pushing for this year. We're always pushing for the removal of police in schools. And at minimum, there needs to be some agreement in place between districts and their police departments. And while that came up in St. Paul and Minneapolis, across the state, it's a very different thing. So there's no level of accountability to really understand what is the oversight? How can you address harm? And where is the accountability and responsibility? So we encourage you all to engage with your legislators, your superintendents, your principals, because they all have avenues to inform and influence. And educators play a critical role in pushing back against this as well. So there's a role for everybody to play. We'd love you to be a part of this work. So email solutionsnotsuspensionscoalition@gmail.com, or you can visit our website at www.solutionsnotsuspensions.org.
Thanks, Marika. Whoever suspended someone in preschool, that teacher or educator need mental help. Like the person that was able to sign that paper, let's bless their hearts. Danyika and Chantel, in respects of time, we want to have space for y'all to say what y'all gonna say. Can we do it in like 2 to 3 minutes? I'm gonna come to you, Danyika. What do you need your fellow beloveds on the other side of this live conversation to do with you to continue to advance these ideas in 2021 and beyond?
Thank you. All right. I want to say I want to say this, and also just know that this is also just difficult. Getting more acquainted with the, state policies, getting in touch with your legislators about what you'd like to see and what you believe in. And I'm saying that sometimes that's complicated because the path to do that can be difficult. It's not simple. There are certain things that are intentionally inaccessible. And so I want to say that with thought that it is not always easy to try to reach out to like a legislator or, folks who are making those kinds of decisions. But that there are organizations out here, like the one that Marika's a part of, Chantel, like that are able to support you. So find a path to those spaces so that you are around your fellow community members and you can get that support and that, and I think, and just build your understanding of how to navigate it. So that's one thing. This other thing is something that has kind of been a theme for me. Take up space to be heard, and hold space for our scholars to be heard. I can't say anything more than that. Like, and don't be afraid to do it. Call out problematic policy, curriculum, like call out anti-Blackness, call out white supremacy culture. And don't worry if you feel like you don't have all the words. I struggle with that too. Like, I'm always trying to like hold these inner conversations with myself. Like, dang, do I say something? Am I crazy? Like, am I hearing this right? You heard what you heard. Say something, call it out. Do not be afraid. And it's not yours to carry. It's not yours to hold. It's yours to give back and say, this is the problem. We have to figure this out. But I'm giving that work back. I would also say practice self-care, because that kind of work is exhausting, and we want to make sure that you are with us for other battles, and also that you are here with us for the celebrations and the victories.
Thanks, Danyika. Last but not least, Chantel.
I feel like Marika and Danyika did a really good job speaking to our people. So I'm gonna speak to our allies. We need to start having those personal conversations with the folks around you and being very real and confronting issues that are harmful to Brown and Black communities. Those conversations are hard. They're uncomfortable. Sometimes you lose a friend, sometimes you lose a family member in the process, but we too go through those processes. We too lose jobs because of difficult conversations that we have to have with our bosses advocating for our Brown and Black kids. We too lose friends. We too lose family members sometimes because of those hard conversations. But the reality is there's been lies told for the last 400 years in this country that have really harmed brown and black people. So it's time for us to get to the truth. And so I'm asking that allies step to the plate, no matter what sector you're in. If you're in the corporate world, if you're a teacher, a principal, step to the plate. Start educating yourself about what is real, what really is happening, because we're a lot of really smart people. They just ignore it, right? It doesn't bother them. Step into what's real, because all of this is affecting our entire society right now. It's not just an isolated problem over here in the Black community. This is an urban community. This is a full city. Cities across the nation are being harmed because of the lies that have been told for the last 400 years and the attitudes of white folks and the way that we have structured our system. Let's stop breaking that system down and rebuilding it so that it's here for everybody. And everything that Danyika and Marika said, all of that needs to happen. You know, sitting on this call is beautiful because I hear the work that Danyika is doing and the work that Marika is doing. And without them doing that work, there's no way I could pass policies in my school board seat. You know, so that work is so important. When we talk about putting teachers in front of the classroom, I can advocate that our budget is spent on more Black teachers, but if we don't have Black teachers being licensed, then where are we going to get them from, right? So all of us have to work collectively together to make this happen. And so everybody just starts stepping to the plate, stepping into your purpose, stepping into your role.
Thank you, Chantel. I want to take a moment to give someone their flowers right now. When I think about this, I want to have an opportunity to speak to the teachers. You know, Marika and Danyika had a chance to speak to our people. Chantel spoke to our allies. I want to have a chance to speak to the teachers. So quick story, I want to give someone their flowers now. So in 1994, during the O.J. Simpson trial, I was in third grade and I was in the classroom, Kathy Sullivan, who was my third grade teacher, a white woman. And in my memory for all of those years since then, all the way in prison, so many times, anytime my O.J. Simpson story was, man, I was in my racist white teacher classroom, man, we was watching the O.J. Simpson trial. I remembered her as this racist white woman. After 14 years, 8 months being in prison, I hadn't seen Miss Sullivan since the 90s, heard from Miss Sullivan or seen Miss Sullivan. When I came home about 18 months ago, I got an email from Miss Sullivan. Kevin, so proud of you. Been following you all these years. How's your sister doing? How is your family doing? Us, the Cooper, I went to Cooper Elementary, South Minneapolis. The entire Cooper Elementary school faculty, I want to send you love and congratulations. It meant so much to me. It meant so much to me. And I haven't had a chance to talk to her and tell her this yet. But I want to salute you, Kathy Sullivan, this white woman that sent me this, like from her position. 20-something years later. And she's a teacher at Kenwood School now, and the Kenwood staff and faculty sends me love and support every time. And every time I get it, it does the same thing for me. It's healing. And it's reminding me of the power of like how important it is when we are children and we in those classrooms, the impact that you have as a teacher. You never know. Yes, for all of those years, I had this experience of my racist third grade teacher during the O.J. Simpson trial. She didn't like it. I didn't know Miss Sullivan. I didn't know who she was then, but I can say what this is. Almost 20-something years later, she is someone who sends me love and support, and it really it matters to my adult self, and it helped me heal. So teachers, you absolutely have the impact now, present, past, future to impact your students. So speak life and love every chance you get, and empathy and understanding every chance you get. It matters. It absolutely matters. So thank y'all all so much today for like coming on here and sharing y'all wisdom from y'all particular seats in the movement. Shout out to all of the amazing work that all three of you sisters do every day out here in the movement for our children in those classrooms and in those schools, because y'all right, if y'all wasn't there doing it, ain't no telling what would be happening to our kids. So I salute y'all so much again, because there is no future without our children. So y'all have my deepest gratitude. So I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to hand it back to MK, and she's going to do some final remarks. Peace and love. It was my honor to hold space with you all today.
Kevin, you are not off the hook that easily.
Thank you, brother.
Be here, please.
You say who?
For real. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, y'all. So thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes left. There's a bunch of links that got dropped into the Facebook event page comment section. Please check it out. It's links to, the Ethnic Studies Coalition, Increasing Teachers of Color, as well as the Student Engagement and Inclusion Act. You'll find the information there. Wanted to make a plug. If you are ignited, just like I am, you can take that fire from today and bring it to tomorrow's action jam. We're going to be in our houses, getting on the Zoom call, the same link that you use to access this call. And we're just going to be doing some collective and individual action together. And then also, while we're doing it, learn how to take individual and collective action together. And so I really encourage you to come through, same time, 12 p.m., same Zoom link, word. Another thing is I wanted to plug real quick because it's legit ethnic studies in the making. This is something that our babies are going to learn about in the near future. Right now in my neighborhood, Lexington Parkway, University Avenue, where the Lexington Light Rail Station is at, there is a predatory developer named Atlantis, who is trying to creep inside the neighborhood and displace the people, my beloveds, who are already there. At 8 a.m., we're going to post up socially distancing style, right? And make history that our babies are going to learn from in future ethnic studies classes in the Frogtown, Rondo, Summit University, Hamlin, Midway area. And so come join us. I heard there's a rumor that there may be breakfast burritos, definitely hot cocoa, and just a lot of really amazing, beautiful, brilliant freedom fighters from Frogtown Neighborhood Association, Development Without Displacement, and Midway Rise Up, who's going to be there in the mix. Come join us, 8 a.m. If you're an early bird. If you want, and then I'll drop it in the chat like right after, but there's a podcast that just came out. Shout out to Jake Bearden from the Money, Power, Land, Solidarity podcast. You will get more details and more context as to why we're showing up at 8 a.m. in the morning over there. So come through if you can. And if you can, it's all good because it's going to be a long old struggle because it's always how it is, right? So with that said, the 2 minutes that we have left, you know how I like to close. I'm going to bring Elder Pam into the room. I'm going to bring SPP and Parent Council into the room. We got this tradition that we do. We say one word, right, that sums up the spirit of this conversation today. And Facebook folks on the other side, please in the comment, also give us your one word that sums up the spirit of this conversation for you today as well. So one word to sum up this the spirit of this conversation for you. We're going to take that last word, right? Usually Elder Pam, shout out to Elder Pamela James from Frogtown Midway. She usually does a countdown, 1, 2, 3. We all say that last word at the same time, and then we're going to hang up on each other and then go about this, struggling on the other fronts that we're going to struggle on. So let's do it. Okay. Y'all ready? All right. So everybody unmute yourself. One word to sum up the spirit of the day for you. And I'm going to call on folks. Okay. Is that okay?
We're not going to all do it at the same time.
That's what I thought.
So Kevin.
Ejikare.
Chantel.
Our.
Marika.
Education for liberation. It's a phrase.
Danyika.
Watershed.
Ooh, I like that.
I got that from you.
Use your words.
Shout out to my
Danica.
Voices for Racial Justice
No, that's
team,
all MK. That's all
podcast team. Shout out to everyone who worked behind the scenes to make this happen as well. Peace and love to all of y'all. Brett, Monica, everybody. Serene, Gabby,
Thank you.
QB, Julia. Shout out to everyone to create this space. Proud seed of the soil.
That's right.
That's right.
Watershed, right? Are you all ready?